Hi there, welcome to Boxing Deep Dive. I'm Lyndon Hosking and great to have you along for another episode of Dream Fights. This is where we match two greats of the past or present against each other and break it all down and see who we think would win and why. I'm going to bring in my co-host for this evening, the always colourful Grant Tazzy Brown, and the walking boxing encyclopedia himself, Mike Altamura. How are we, guys?
Love me or hate me, you got to admit that I know boxing and I know it better than most. I live it, breathe it. It's from the age of 5, 3 generations, father, grandfather, my amateur career, my pro career. I've been a trainer, a manager, promoter. I've known more about this game than most of you bums out there. So, as I said, I don't care if you love me or hate me, but I know this sport and most of you don't know shit about boxing.
Just to preempt things, Mike, we've obviously, before the show started, we had a little bit of a test edition of the new show coming up called Talking Boxing, where we just talk about boxing, whatever's on our mind. Made the mistake of getting Tazzy riled up, and this is a result of it. How you been?
Yeah, one of my dream fights definitely isn't Tazzy taking on any of these fans that are going to be talking boxing with us in a quiz, because it could end poorly.
Meet me in a car park all day, every day.
No, you're not about that life anymore, Taz. But look, onto the fight this week. So this was Tazzy's pick, right?
Yep.
So I give Tazzy a lot of credit for this pick, because it's probably one of the fighters possesses the greatest jab in heavyweight history, and the other would be top 3 to 5 jabs in heavyweight history at a minimum. So fascinating encounter.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in 1 second. But before we do that, we need to get to the results of last week's dream fight, which was Manny Pacquiao against Terence Crawford. And this is the result. 67% for Terence Crawford, 33% for the Pac-Man. Now, we did something a little bit different with this as well. We added a points or decision. Now, out of that 67% for Crawford, I think it was 44% said Crawford by decision, 23% said Crawford by knockout. Whereas for Pacquiao, I think it was 20% said points, 13% for a knockout. So end of the day, 67% for Terence Crawford. Taz, were you surprised by that?
Not surprised, mate. Only Peter Maniatis and the Filipinos believe Pacquiao's immortality. Us people that aren't fanboys, we respect him as a great champion, but we also know he's not unbeatable. He's been beaten by Marquez, I think, 3 out of 4 times. Beaten by guys like Tim Bradley, beaten by Eric Morales, schooled by Floyd Mayweather, knocked out by Marquez where he was asleep for 15, 20 minutes. And then there's a lot of, I won't say too much, there's a lot of questions about him moving up in weight. So, he's a great fighter, but I think people need to get the head out of Manny Pacquiao's ass, to be honest with you.
Well, for the record, I actually tipped Manny Pacquiao to win. But anyway, we won't go into that. Mike, what were your thoughts about that? I think you tipped Terence Crawford in a really tight decision, didn't you?
Yeah, I think the 33% that voted for Pacquiao were Peter Maniatis' followers. But no, look, I think that, I say that cheekily though as well, because we're looking at prime Pacquiao, not the version of Pacquiao that was floated when it was discussed about him fighting Crawford. But I think that it surprises me that actually the fans voted for Crawford, because in the popularity stakes, it's a no contest towards Pacquiao. So I think that just reflects how highly and how revered a space this generation hold Terence Crawford's boxing capabilities. So it doesn't really surprise me in the sense that, we've got real boxing followers on the pages. So, of course, they're going to make calculated decisions. But I thought maybe Manny's mainstream popularity would float in a little bit more than that.
Well, my decision in the end was really based on the fact that Pacquiao, even back, I think it was 2009, 2010 was the edition or the version I was sort of looking at, was absolutely proven product. He knew exactly what you were going to get, and he'd fought obviously something, most of the best fighters in the world at that stage. Where as much as I admire Crawford, I haven't. Obviously, he's got nowhere near the resume as Pacquiao. So that was probably why I went for Pacquiao in the end. But look, I think it was great.
I think it's their styles make fights, and I mean, any Pacquiao version, Terence Crawford's a problem.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt.
Full respect for talking. I'm just talking boxing now. Full respect to Pacquiao. He's not a guy like Cotto, Margarito, a bit slower, or a Hatton, or even a Marquez who's a counter puncher. But look, Crawford is long range. He can box, can counter punch, can punch. Has that aggro in him to get you out of there if he hurts you, if he buzzes you. Southpaw, orthodox. It's all about certain styles when people meet. Someone's wrong for someone. I believe Floyd Mayweather would beat Manny 10 out of 10 times if they fought. Because styles make fights. And I believe Crawford would too. A lot of guys, I believe Manny would beat 10 out of 10. But styles for a reason. That's why he never really had a clear win over Marquez. Marquez was that style that frustrated Manny.
Yep. And finally got it right for the fourth attempt. Well, still on you, Tazzy. It's your pick this week, and it's one hell of a heavyweight showdown.
Well,
Who have you got?
Look, I'm on fire lately. They call me Midas. They call me Midas. Anything I touch turns to gold. If you don't know who Midas is out there, people, please Google. I can't do nothing wrong. I've kicked Peter Maniatis' ass 4 times in the quiz, where he's sulking and complaining about questions being not easy and all this stuff. Maybe if you give him the questions the day before, Lyndon, maybe he would like that. I don't know. But anyway, I just had a great legendary fight. Now I'm going to pick a dream fight. 2 of the greatest heavyweights of all time, both top 10. Larry Holmes versus Lennox Lewis. If this one doesn't get your fingers, your lips wet, nothing will.
I really like the fight, Mike. You can see there we've made it for 12 rounds. I contemplated maybe a 15-round fight because obviously Holmes started at 15 rounds, but we've put it at the home or the spiritual home of boxing in the world, and that's Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, USA. So, Mike, what a pick, and how hard was it to get your head around who's going to win this one?
I flip-flopped a lot on this fight. Obviously, I'll reserve my judgment and my pick for later, but I think that what's interesting in this bout, so Holmes, to me, is historically the greater heavyweight just based on his reign, which is, we may never see a reign like that by a heavyweight champ ever again. That's the reality of it. But I think that the interesting part, it really is the battle of the jabs, but Lennox Lewis, much heavier-handed. Holmes probably the more resilient, the more versatile. Lennox Lewis with a 3.5-inch reach advantage, which is important because he was a good athlete and good speed as well. So Holmes would have to take those weapons away from him. But I think stylistically, this is a great fight. I think that it's going deep. I don't think it's going to be an early night either way. But I think that they match up really well because both guys possess a very high boxing IQ and are able to adjust.
Yeah, no, they certainly do. Well, let's have a look at Larry Holmes for starters, Tazzy. So ended up with a 69-6 record with 44 KOs. We all know that he got to 48-0 before he lost to Michael Spinks. You can see there just the 2 world titles in 78 with the WBC heavyweight title against Ken Norton, IBF heavyweight title that was actually awarded to him in 1984. 16 defences of the WBC heavyweight title, and you can just see, I've just put some of his biggest wins there. Norton, Shavers, Ali, Berbick, Spinks, Leon Spinks, Cooney, Witherspoon, Bone Crusher, Ray Mercer. You could probably throw a few more others in there as well. And then inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 2008. And Tazzy, this guy would probably be the perfect example of one of the most underrated fighters of all time.
Yeah, look, I grew up, my father, grandfather, talking about Larry Holmes, and he came at an awkward time. He came after Muhammad Ali. I mean, anyone that's going to come after Muhammad Ali is going to sort of not live up to expectations, are they? If he wasn't a talker like Ali. If he did, they say, "Oh, you're a poor man's Ali." He, wasn't, a flamboyant guy, but he could fight. He could box, and he was in Ali's training camp sparring him for years when he knew he could beat Ali towards when Ali was getting over it. But the crowd, the people never really took to him. It was sort of just post Ali, very hard times, but he beat everyone, as he said, 16 defences. I think he was robbed of breaking Marciano's record, which they I felt like there was a curse for Marciano that no one could break his record. But Holmes was a beautiful boxer, great left jab, good power, great right uppercut, the Eastern Assassin. He was very smart. He had a good chin. He got dropped by some of the biggest punches in the world, and he'd get up and fight on. He had everything. He'd go to the body. He was just in an awkward era because it was after the great Ali, who arguably the biggest name in sport, not boxing, ever lived. So how can you come after Ali? Like, it's just bad luck.
Yeah, he's spot on, isn't he, Mike? And add to that he actually did what he did to Ali when they fought too, which was one of probably the saddest sights in boxing history. So not only was it a hard act to follow after Ali, but then to actually beat Ali the way he did, he was always going to battle to be a fan favourite, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, any time you have to take out a man that you grew up idolising is bittersweet, and I think that Ali dealt with that. And of course, we're seeing here now the face-off of his title-winning performance against Ken Norton, where it literally came down to round 15, and Holmes was able to just dig a little bit deeper and land the heavier shots in the 15th. And what was crucial in this fight, which will play out to stylistic adjustments Holmes could make against Lennox Lewis, is that Holmes actually bit down on his gum shield and went to war in the trenches, which a lot of people didn't feel he possessed before the fight. And I think that when you go back and watch his fight with Norton and even, say with Cooney, big fights thereafter, Holmes, even though he liked to fight off the outside with his hands down and that spear and jab, he had a really underrated cross-arm defense, and also his anticipation of shots coming and his range control was exceptionally good. You see that when he felt a punch was coming, probably with the exception of Ronaldo Snipes and Ernie Shavers, who both dropped him heavy and he managed to get up. Tyson, of course, the last knockdown, one, Holmes was past his best, but two, he's actually his glove got stuck in the rope when he was going to throw the uppercut, which is why he got iced against Tyson.
Yeah.
But Holmes was very good at anticipating when a guy was about to throw, just to dip his knees a little bit and to shift with the shot. Not too dissimilar to Roberto Duran, which is why he's known for having such great defense and a great chin. He was able to withstand, of course, a prime Evander Holyfield in the early 1990s, and just incredible recuperative powers, incredibly well conditioned despite the way his body may appear.
And also, too, Lyndon and Mike, the later part of his career, like the second chapter, he beat the undefeated Ray Mercer, 88 Olympic gold medalist, who gave Lennox Lewis a nightmare later on. First man to beat the young, hungry Mercer, and this was on the comeback.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you're right, because after he was knocked out by Tyson, it looked like it was career over, and he came back and had a few soft wins, and then, like you said, he beat Mercer, put himself back into the line of world title fights. And I think, Mike, how long after that fight did he actually carry on? Because I think after Tyson beat him, that was his 51st fight, I think. He had another 19 fights after that, and as I said, we all thought he was finished after Tyson knocked him out.
Yeah, it was either 7 or 8 years after that he carried on. So, of course, he went on like the legend circuit. So he beat Butterbean late career, and then he beat Mike Weaver, rematch, James Bone Crusher Smith, rematch in like a legend circuit, so the over 40s. But like Taz said, I mean, just the fact he's able to come back and defeat Mercer and then push Evander Holyfield to a tough decision loss, take Oliver McCall 12 rounds in McCall's first world title defense, WBC world title, the one from knocking out Lewis in the second round. I think you got to respect the fact that he was, I'm not going to say he adjusted. He didn't adjust like Foreman in his comeback, but he fought at a very tempered and measured pace, and he made it work for him really him and Foreman are the two that made comebacks in the 90s amongst many other heavyweights. Even historically, you look at heavyweights coming back, usually it was tragic. Ali, no different. But for Holmes, it was above satisfactory. He actually had a good resurgence in the 90s.
Probably showed how ordinary the competition was around that time too, Tazzy, when you got Foreman and Holmes came back and both had cracks at the world title, and Foreman obviously won the world title. But I'm probably thinking, Tazzy, of maybe early 80s Holmes here. What do you think? Is the prime Holmes?
Yeah. I mean, the Holmes that fought Ali, the Holmes that beat Norton, the Holmes that beat Cooney. So what, early 80s? Yeah.
And Mike, so we're saying sort of 80 to 83 maybe of Holmes. What about Lennox Lewis? Sort of, what are we thinking? Late 90s, I'm probably thinking.
Yeah, probably late 90s, early 2000s. I think probably you take the first Holyfield fight as a benchmark.
Yeah.
But then, if you remember, he had that stretch in 2000. Was it that he beat Michael Grant, Franz Botha, David Tua back to back, and beat them all with very, very different stylistic game plans, which to me I think reflected his versatility as a fleet-footed big man heavyweight who could punch as well.
Let's have a look at his record. 41-2-1, 32 KOs. Won the heavyweight title, different versions, multiple times. You can see there, WBC heavyweight champion, 92, 97, 2001. WBA heavyweight champion in 99. IBF heavyweight champion, 99, 2001. And now, as I said, won and lost to different people at different times. There's some of his greatest victories. Razor Ruddock, Tony Tucker, Frank Bruno, Tommy Morrison, Ray Mercer, Oliver McCall, Evander Holyfield, Mike Tyson, and Vitaly Klitschko. The list just goes on. And he was inducted in the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 2009. What were you going to say there, Tazzy?
Great fighter, but the names on his record is not really nothing to stand out. You know what I mean? Razor Ruddock, Frank Bruno. I mean, obviously Tyson was past his best. Great fighter. He got better. I actually respect this man more now he's retired than I did when he was fighting. I wasn't a Lennox Lewis fan, but I do respect him that he did revenge both defeats, and they were the only two defeats, so he beat every man that's ever beaten him. And then the Klitschko era was along, which I stopped watching heavyweight boxing. Stopped watching it. So I really appreciated Lennox after he retired. When he was fighting, wasn't a massive fan. Never been a massive fan of English heavyweights, to be honest with you. Obviously till now Fury, but I mean, yeah, look, I know the Holyfield fight, the first one for the Undisputed, was controversial and Lewis should have got it. But then again, the next one against Holyfield was probably unlucky in the rematch. I always just wondered why he struggled with a little guy like Holyfield so much. I know Holyfield had great heart and gave Bo troubles and that, but as I said, the win against Mercer was a rough night in the office, which Holmes obviously beat Mercer before he did. Never really liked Razor Ruddock and Frank Bruno. I don't really rate them guys at all. My top 200 heavyweights. Tyson was totally shot. The knockout losses to Ruckman and Oliver McCall. Obviously, it could happen to anyone. Then he revenged it. Great fighter. Big man that could box, that could punch. Good left jab. Was obviously a lot better when he was with Emmanuel Stewart. But, yeah, he done what he could do in his era, as everyone does.
Mike, do you think that Lewis was a bit harder to judge because, like Tazzy said, he beat probably one of the smallest heavyweights in Holyfield. He beat a washed-up Tyson. He refused to fight Riddick Bowe for all whatever reasons they were. Gave up the WBC title. Bowe refused to fight him. Sorry, but end of the day, we never got to see him fight Bowe. But do you think it's a little bit harder to judge because he'd fought most of his biggest wins were against sort of washed-up guys, or not washed up, but guys, or maybe a little bit past the peak, like you can see Bruno here?
Yeah, I think, look, most of the guys that he beat were post-prime. I will say, not knocking out a prime 36-0 Gary Mason was significant. I think that there's wins on Lennox's record that get overrated. Like you guys said, the knockout of Tyson, that was, a 20th of prime Mike Tyson, if that.
Yeah.
But, like here, we've seen him destroy Tommy Morrison. Just the fashion in which he won that fight. Here, another one, Gallotta. Gallotta went to war twice with Riddick Bowe, controversial disqualifications, and then Lennox iced him in round one. I think that there's a lot of wins on Lennox's record that are really undervalued. Here, another one, Shannon Briggs won a version of the heavyweight world title in the future. I know at this time he was lineal champ due to a controversial decision over Foreman, but just think that there's enough there, destroying the Michael Grant myth, undefeated heavyweight. Nullifying David Tua. I know David Tua was a small heavyweight, but Tua had been
the win over Tua impressed me. The way he handled Tua.
Yeah, like he completely nullified him from the outside. I think that there's enough there on his resume that you can gauge him as a top 10 all-time heavyweight, and it's just a shame 100%. He never had the opportunity, through no fault of his own, to fight Bowe or Tyson. Now, for today's discussion, what's interesting with all this is that I don't think, as good as a competition that he fought was, I don't think he ever faced anyone anywhere remotely near with the boxing IQ that Larry Holmes possesses.
Yeah. Well said, mate. Well, that sort of gets us to, I suppose, the whole crux of the show, and that is who wins and why. I must admit, Tazzy, you've done it again with this, because it's one of those ones that's like, shit, who's going to win this? And you go back and forth, and you nailed it with the classic fight. You're going to nail it with this one. Let's start with you. It's your choice. Break it all down. Who wins and why?
I mean, both guys have got a great left jab to start off with. I mean, Holmes probably known as probably the better, but both great left jabs. They're both fairly big men. Lewis obviously a bit bigger. They both got good right hands. So power, both good power. They both adjust. They both got great boxing IQs. Lennox was a Olympic gold medalist, and Holmes was just a beautiful boxer. They both beat everyone in the era. I think Holmes had a better chin than Lewis, a bit tougher. He didn't get knocked out by guys like McCall and Hasim Ruckman. I mean, he come back, retired, and got stopped by Mike Tyson, but then rebounded and gave Holyfield a good fight and beat Mercer. I mean, Mercer gave Lennox Lewis fits. It's a good fight to go watch back too, guys. That's a very good fight. Look, it's down to the wire, but I think Larry Holmes is just a bit better at everything. I think he's just an all-round better fighter. I think that he fought the better opposition, and both top 10 heavyweights. But I've got Holmes. I think I had him in my top 5. So I think Holmes wins the decision. A great bout of their jabs early. They both had their moments. They both, Lewis might worry Holmes early on. But I think Holmes, just his experience, his durability, and I think Holmes had a bit more mongrel than Lennox did. I think he really wanted to get outside the Ali shadow. He used to say about how, you better all respect me. And where he got ripped off by Don King. I think Larry Holmes wins the unanimous decision.
All right, yep, so it's one for Holmes by unanimous decision. Mike, if it's all right with you, I'm going to go next because I'm sick of being the last one that has to cop the brunt of everything, all right? And
perfect.
Be a tiebreaker. So you're going to be the one tonight. But I'm happy to say that in this instance, I agree with Tazzy. I think Lewis would represent something maybe that Holmes I hadn't seen before. That was the size. I know he'd beaten guys like Bone Crusher and Carl Williams. They were more tall rather than big. Where Lewis was, I think he was 6'5", and was he Mike 250 pound or 260, whatever he was. Yeah. He was a big man. So that was probably one of the things that made me maybe might go towards Lewis. But I just think, like Tazzy said, he's got the chin. I know Mike Tyson iced him, but Tyson iced everyone in the late 80s, so there's no disgrace in that. So I think the key to the whole fight would be Holmes' jab and his chin. I think his movement would be good. I think Lewis had the habit of maybe being a little bit mechanical, a bit easy to read. Although for his size, he was pretty agile, but I just think it would have been easy for Holmes to read. I think his jab would have kept Lewis at bay. Holmes' chin would have held up okay, and I just think it would have been a close fight, but I think Larry Holmes would have won a unanimous 12-round decision. If it had gone to 15, I reckon maybe he might have got him out of there in 13 or 14 rounds. But Larry Holmes, for me, one of the most underrated, well, we say he's underrated, but we all have him in our top 5. But I just think he was a great champion. Unlucky to come after Ali. I think if it hadn't been, then he would have been regarded even higher. But truly a remarkable champion. 16 title defences, says it all. Beat everyone in his era. And I think he would have had a bit too much for Lennox Lewis. So I'm picking Holmes by 12-round decision. It's up to you, Mike.
I think the word you're searching for with Holmes was underappreciated.
There you go.
And
sorry, not underrated, underappreciated. Exactly.
To show you how underappreciated he was, a couple of years back when Donald Trump was campaigning to be re-elected for American president, he was in Pennsylvania and on the mic gave a shout out to ask how Larry was doing, but he called him Ernie Holmes. Even all these years later, people can't get it right and tip their hat to him accordingly. But look, it's a clean sweep this week. I don't know where Pete's opinion would have sat on this fight, but
he would have went for
I think
Lewis
that
just to be a prick, I reckon. What do you reckon, Tazzy?
Yeah, I think
who cares? Who cares what his opinion is?
Sorry, Mike. Go ahead, mate.
I think it would have been a nip and tuck fight. I think that Lennox definitely athletically would have brought quite a bit of a challenge to Holmes. I just look at, to me, what's important when sizing this up is I think Holmes was a better infighter. So it's who can control from the outside. And Holmes was a master at slowing things down and controlling the tempo from the outside. So unless Lennox was prepared to take some risks and get down and dirty, that 3.5-inch reach advantage will be advantageous early, but I think Holmes adjusts to that, gets his rhythm, feints, finds his range, jabs to the body, jabs to the head. And I just think that the longer the fight is, the more he pulls away. I think it's like an 8-round-to-4 kind of job, but probably Holmes winning the majority of the final 6 rounds. So I think that Lennox would give a valiant effort as he always did. And I don't think there's a chance in this fight of him getting knocked out over 12 rounds because I don't think Holmes would hold his feet long enough because he wouldn't have to. I think that he would know how to draw Lennox into the vacuum and outbox him and be satisfied to do that. But stylistically, it would have been a fascinating match because to see Holmes in with an athletic heavyweight who's carrying 40 pounds on him. Jerry Cooney was such a big, physical, strong heavyweight, had about 30 pounds on Holmes, but he had nowhere near the speed or athleticism that Lennox had.
Skill.
So it would have brought a different challenge. But I think that you're looking at one guy that's a great heavyweight and one guy that's an exceptionally great heavyweight. And I think that that's why you got to favour Holmes.
Yeah, and I think, and you're right, you said about with Holmes not really having to knock Lewis out. I think he would realise that it would be very, very hard to knock Lewis out. I think he would just do what he has to do to get the decision, and that's what he was great at. But so there you go, 3-0. Well, we haven't sort of seen that for a while, Tazzy, a clean sweep.
Yeah, mate. I like it when everyone's in agreement with me because it's always good. But look, Larry Holmes. I mean, both fighters are both legends, both top 10 heavyweights. I've got Larry up a bit closer to the top spot. But yeah, both dominated their era. Both beat pretty much whoever they put in front of them, and both living legends of the game. But I mean, I really feel for mine, Larry Holmes. Unless you're like Mike and yourself, Lyndon, know the game and have historians of the sport. Peter would be as well. Peter knows the game as well. We've got so much respect for Larry Holmes. I feel like he doesn't get what he deserves because a lot of people don't really know how good he was. And as I said, he's probably too good for his own good. He was in the Ali. After Ali, he beat everyone. He was, I don't think they wanted him as a champion. They don't really, and he used to sort of say it too in the interviews. Give him my dues. I'm the champ. I've beaten everyone. And when I've got to start asking for recognition, it turns people off, as you know. But No, yeah. So all hail the great Larry Holmes. I think he got a lot more respect put on his name tonight.
Nah, for sure. Well, it's back to me next week, and I must admit, I had to sort of delve a little bit deep into sort of seeing two fighters I'd like to have a crack at, because we've done a lot of the welterweight to middleweight sort of fights, and obviously a couple of heavyweights ones as well. I'm going to stick with the heavyweights this week, but I'm going to throw a little bit of a different mix to it. I'm going to go for two great champions, but two that haven't obviously been mentioned as dream fights before, and that is the real deal, Evander Holyfield. I'm going to throw him in against Smokin' Joe Fraser in a 12-round war, you would think. And I like this fight, Mike, because very, very similar sizes. Neither one of them were massive heavyweights, but both had that non-stop work rate, and I just think it would be just a sight to behold. What do you think?
That's a hell of a fight. A hell of a fight.
Stylistically, it's a great fight. Size, both good punch output. That's a good one, Lyndon.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be one of those ones that'll go back and forth because, I think like all of them, you can make a case of who would beat who. So that's it for next week. The real deal, Evander Holyfield against Smokin' Joe Fraser. I'm not. What do you reckon? 12 rounds, 15 rounds. Holyfield fought 15 rounds a couple of times. What do you guys think?
Yeah, we can go 15. He beat Kawi over 15 for the cruiserweight world title, so I think we can go 15 on it.
And we'll put it at Caesar's Palace, Tazzy. That's the spiritual home. So 15 rounds, Caesar's Palace. Have a bit of a think about who you guys would win and why. And for everyone watching out there as well, we're almost due. Mike, we'll get to you the week after, but we're almost due for a request as well. So if you've got some fights out there you would like us to maybe cover, love to hear what you have to say. And as usual, like, share, subscribe. Hopefully we'll have Pete back next week to add his input. But until then, guys, thanks very much, and we'll see you then.
Thanks, guys. A shout out to our favourite guy, Big Bill Hack in Tasmania.
Go,
Bill. Billy boy.
Thanks, guys.